Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Josh Impact Insights, your weekly talk show about causes and effects. During COVID, so many social groups and NGOs were working in frontline, but many of them were either not registered or temporary in nature. Like last time we discussed registration under IT to bring credibility of NGOs, this episode will talk about regulatory aspects related to registration of NGOs under different authorities. Our guest today is Mr. Prashant Jain, co founder and partner of Samisti Legal, a boutique law firm, and Ratnatraya Consulting, a digital accounting and compliance firm based out of Hyderabad. He has expertise in advising on a wide range of transactions spread across diverse sectors such as infrastructure, IT, real estate, biotech, pharma, logistics, healthcare, retail, etc. He also advises NGOs on pro bono basis. He has worked on around 150 transactions over a period of last 14 years, involving over 50 billion rupees of investment. He is an advocate enrolled with the Bar Council of Andhra Pradesh and is also a qualified company secretary and a member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. He was ranked among top 50 corporate dealmakers for the year 2019 by Legally India. Hi Prashant and welcome to Impact Insights.
Yeah, thanks, Tavishi. Thanks for inviting. Appreciate.
Let's start with a very basic question. Is it mandatory to register an NGO or can one work as a volunteer or group without registration?
Yeah, so Tavishi, if I have to give you the straight answer, it's not mandatory to register a NGO, but there are certain advantages with when you basically register as an NGO. So basically, if I am as Prashant wanting to do any charity, then maybe at my individual level I can start doing the charity. But if I have a larger goal in terms of raising money from what do you call general public or friends and relatives, then it becomes very important that I register an NGO in whichever form of entity which are available in the market. That maybe we can discuss later. But it is very important that I basically register an NGO and then take the donation, because if I don't register, then under certain laws it becomes what do you call illegal. Maybe for if you are in the sector of doing any kind of a charity for child, then maybe under certain laws it becomes mandatory that you register yourself as an NGO. And under Income Tax Act also, if you are not an NGO, then there are certain what do you call tax implications. So for doing an individual activity in terms of not raising money, maybe you can do at your individual level. But once you want to basically raise any money from public and then do any kind of a charity, then it becomes important that you register an NGO. And when you are basically registering, then you also need to make sure that the objects which you are wanting to do as part of your charity are also basically might be regulated under a specific law. So to conclude, yeah, so if you're doing at an individual level, maybe not, but it also becomes important that your objects are reviewed in terms of the applicable laws and then the tax implications.
You mentioned some of the advantages of getting an NGO registered. Any other benefits of getting that done?
Yeah, so as I previously said, if you are raising money from public, then maybe the money which comes to the bank account of the NGO under the Income Tax Act, if you're registered as a NGO with the Income Tax Authority, then that amount is not taken as your income and you will not be taxed. But if you are not registered as an NGO, then the amount which is flowing into your account will be taken as a income to you and you will be taxed. So from a tax perspective, that gives you an advantage by registering an NGO. Second, as I previously said, there are certain objects, maybe like what do you call, if you are getting into the business of education, you need to register. Otherwise, that will not be recognized as a what do you call charity organization which is into the business of education, and that cannot be done. So if you're getting into any kind of a charity for juvenile or child, then basically you require a registration of specific law. So when you are deciding that you want to do charity, you need to make sure that what are the objects which you are going to implement through charity are not hit by the specific regulations. If those are hit, then you will require registration. Second, as I previously said, maybe the tax implications. Third, now when you basically market your NGO, or when you want to basically take the NGO to a logical conclusion by raising money, if you are doing as an individual, maybe public will not be interested to basically fund you. But if you're doing through a entity, whether it's a society, trust, or a Section 8 company, it brings a lot of sanctity to the objects which you are going to implement. So it becomes important that you register an NGO through an entity, not at an individual level. And when you're raising money from public also gets a feel that, okay, you are serious, and the money which is going into the bank account of the NGO will be properly used. It is not something which you are doing any kind of a money laundering or you're siphoning the money. So it from a optic perspective and from a transparency perspective, governance perspective, you need to have a NGO, keeping aside what advantage you have as from a tax what do you call implication perspective, but from a transparency governance perspective, to basically make sure that you have proper funds to run your charity, you need to register as an entity rather than doing it at an individual level. I also want to add one more bit here. So basically, if you see the current CSR regime in India, under the Companies Act, there are certain regulations through which the Indian corporates have to deploy certain part of their income for CSR activities. Now, if you want to become eligible for CSR activity, CSR funding, then basically you need to be a registered NGO. The companies are not supposed to fund any unregistered NGO or an individual. So it becomes very, very important. If you want to access the CSR funds, you are registered as a NGO rather than doing at an individual level. Second, if you want to access the foreign donation, then you need to get a FCRA registration from the ministry. So for getting a FCRA registration, you need to have an entity. It cannot, individual cannot go and register as an what do you call FCRA individual or FCRA compliant what do you call entity which can receive the fund. So it becomes very, very important that if you want to raise CSR fund, if you want to raise foreign fund, you are registered as an NGO.
So how can one register an NGO?
Yeah, so again, this has to be broken up into two parts. One is the registration. Second is your benefit in terms of the Income Tax Act. So for registration, as I said, if you are choosing trust as your entity, then you have to draft a trust deed. Then the trust deed has to be registered with the district registrar of the local what do you call jurisdiction where you want to register your trust. So the district registrar will register a trust, and then they will give you the registered trust deed. Post that, you can open your bank account, obtain PAN, and all that stuff. When it comes to the society, the process is same. You need to basically draft your bylaws, go to the society registrar. He will register and give you the certificate. Post that, you can obtain and then open the bank account and then start the what do you call activity. Section 8 company, you have to go to the register of companies. There also you need to draft your memorandum of association, which will detail the object clause of the company, and then you register, and then you get the certificate of incorporation. So this is the registration process. But once you have registered, then to basically get a benefit of being an NGO would be only after you register yourself with the income tax department. So under the income tax law, you need to basically get a section 10, section 12 registration first with the income tax department. Post that, once the income tax department says that, okay, we have given you the certificate for section 12, then you become an NGO, recognized NGO under the Income Tax Act, so that whatever donations you are raising will not be taxed. So that is the first certificate which you get from the income tax department. Then you basically apply for a ATG certificate, which is basically to give benefit to your donors, because under the Income Tax Act, if you are a ATG registered trust or a society or a section 8 company, then the person who is donating you the what do you call making you the donation, then he will get certain exemptions under his individual filings. So this is the process of calling registering an entity and then calling yourself as an NGO under the Income Tax Act.
Okay, and how to decide which form of legal entity is better for a cause or for a person?
Yeah, so Tavishi, again, this depends on certain factors. The basic factor would be to decide basically what kind of entities which are available in the Indian ecosystem to register. So just to give you a flavor, there are three kinds of entities. One is your Section 8 company, which is regulated under the company law. Second is your trust, which is again regulated under the Indian Trust Act. Then the society, which is again regulated under the what do you call state specific society law. So these are the three kind of entities which are available in the market to basically to the charity. Now, if you have to decide what kind of entities you should choose, then I will give you the benefits or the features of each of the entity. Now, when I say society and trust, these are the two entities which are regulated under the Indian law, but they are not basically fully regulated. When you want to register, then you have to file a trust deed with the district registrar. Then the district registrar will give you a registration certificate. That's it. After that, they don't basically regulate you. As per the Indian Trust Act, you self-regulate yourself. The same goes with the society. If you want to register the society, then you go to the society registrar, and then the registrar gives you the society registration certificate. Post that, based on the bylaws, you basically govern yourself. But when it comes to the Section 8 company, one, you have to register that with the register of companies. Then post that, also under the company law, there are certain filing requirements which you have to do at different stages. So when you are deciding which kind of organization you want to go ahead with for your charity, then maybe you have to basically think through whether you want a transparent structure, whether you want more governed structure, because that would give you advantage in terms of showing it to the donors who basically wants to donate, and showing them that, okay, the money which you are donating is basically going for the purpose for which you have donated, and we are regulated. Then maybe you can go for a Section 8 company. But if you want lesser compliance and the transparency and governance are not too much of your concern, then maybe you can go for a trust or a society. But trust and society, as I said, are less burdened in terms of compliance, and maybe Section 8 company would have more compliance, but maybe that will help you to show transparency and governance in your structure to your potential donors. So maybe that would depend upon. So when you are choosing, it would depend upon what kind of charity you are doing. So it's not that one solution all fit. It is all basically depending upon what kind of your charity you want to do.
What are the related compliances of each form of the legal entities mentioned by you?
Yeah, so as I previously mentioned in my previous answers, uh, for society and trust, these entities are not regulated. Maybe for registration, you need to basically go to the respective registrar. But post registration, you don't have too much of compliances. Uh, for Section 8 companies, every year you need to basically file your balance sheet with the uh, register of companies, and then maybe there are certain event based compliances. If you are basically changing your members in the Section 8 companies, you need to do certain filings with the registrar of companies. But when it comes to the trust and society, even though you are changing your trustees or members, you don't need to file any forms, or any make any filings with the respective registrar. This is the compliance under the respective laws. But when it comes to income tax, filings, all the three entities have to do whatever is required in terms of the income tax laws. They need to file their balance sheet with the income tax authorities, all that. So from a compliance perspective, Section 8 companies are required to do some compliance under the company law, but the society and the trust don't have too much to do. When it comes to income tax, everybody is at par.
Sure. So what are the key points for an NGO to consider while getting registered?
Yeah, so from a do's and don'ts perspective, if somebody is wanting to start a NGO, one, whatever entity you choose, whether it's a trust, society, or a Section 8 company, make sure that the bylaws, if it's a Section 8 company, bylaws, if it's a society, trust deed, if it's a trust, is completely well drafted and is complete in all aspects. It should not be loosely drafted, because end of the day, once the trust deed or a bylaw is drafted, the governance of the entity which is going to get formed will be derived from these charter documents. So when you are drafting the trust deed, make sure that the trust deed properly captures the objects of the clause, then also talks about who will be the trustee, different scenarios, how the trust will evolve. If you are having multiple trustees, then how the voting will happen. So it becomes very, very important that you get the trustee drafted from an expert, not that you just pick something from the internet and then use it. So that is very, very important. Same goes with the other form of entities, whether it's a society or a Section 8 company. Make sure that you draft their charter documents properly, so that there's no confusion going forward. So that is one important advice, or a do, or do when you are basically forming a charity. Second, it's not important that you have too many members or trustees in the entity. It is always important that the objective of the trust is implemented. So if it's important for your objective, to have 2 trustees, 3 trustees, please have it. But if you are the sole, guy who is going to implement the object of the trustee, then the sole guy can always be the trustee of the trust or the member of the society. But under the law for society, you need to have minimum members. Maybe if I correctly remember, it's 7. So at least in Telangana. So if for society you may need more members, but for trust you don't need too much of memberships. You can only start your NGO to start with. You can have the trustee, then you can be the trustee, and then if required, then you can keep on adding. But having too many people on day one becomes a challenge. So it's always important that you only do whatever is required. Then maybe one is drafting the trust deed. Second, choosing the right people who should be there on your entity. Third would be to make sure that whatever assets which you are creating in the trust, you basically properly define how those assets will get devolved in the in favor of any third party in future. So ultimately, it is the trust deed. So make sure that trust deed is the trust deed, or the the bylaw or the charter which you are having for the society is clearly capturing how the entity will function, and if required, how the entity will get wound up if required. So that would be very, very important. It's not that you just write something today and then tomorrow there is a confusion. So these documents will become the bylaws and the Bible for the entire evaluation of your charity.
Thank you, Prashant, for sharing this information with us. It will help many NGOs, including those currently working without registration, in understanding the importance of getting registered, as well as avoid any penalties or criminal liabilities which may arise due to ignorances of law.
Yeah, thanks, Tavishi. Thanks for inviting. Pleasure being part of the JOSH Impact Insight.